Star Wars Outlaws can only be compared to a show car. All show, no go. Let's get into it. Kicking things off, let's talk about the positives with regards to Star Wars Outlaws. And the biggest positive that I have for Star Wars Outlaws is that this game undoubtedly is probably the most immersive Star Wars experience I have ever played. Everything from the visuals, the audio, the voice acting, all of these things, the worlds themselves, really help with the immersion. But the two things that really elevate the immersion for this game in particular, number one is the hidden load screens. There is no load screen officially when you play this game once you boot into it. Unless you are doing a reset or you are doing a fast travel, you don't see a load screen. You can go from land, you can walk into your ship, get onto the captain's chair, launch the ship into space, hit hyperspace to go to another system, and then land your ship again seamlessly without seeing an official load screen. Yes, we know when you're in the clouds, that's a load screen. When you're in hyperspace, that's a load screen. But it's hidden within the game and it doesn't ruin the immersion. But not only does that help with the immersion, the second thing that helps with Star Wars Outlaws immersion is something that Ubisoft hasn't done in a long time, and that is do away with the icons all over the map. Essentially, with the exception of main quests and selected side quests, most of the side activities in this game do not have icons littered on your map. You'll have to do things like walk into the cantina, see the conversations, talk to an NPC, listen in on two NPCs having a conversation, find a data pad. The game allows you to explore and discover, and as you do these things, you will gain quests that will then show up on your map where they are. This is something that Ubisoft typically doesn't do. We all know about the towers revealing the map and seeing all these icons. That's not here. So all of these things really help the immersion of this game. And when I was playing it, I felt like I was in the Star Wars universe, and I would lose hours at a time because I'm a big Star Wars guy, and being able to play this game seamless and get lost in its world and the world that they created was absolutely fantastic, and it is the best part of Star Wars Outlaws. But now let's get into the not so good part, but not the worst part. Gameplay. The gameplay of Star Wars Outlaws is very basic across the board. It doesn't matter if you are platforming, if you are shooting, if you're in stealth, if you're flying your ship. Everything is very basic. There's nothing new here in terms of gameplay mechanics. Everything you see here has been done before, but not only has it been done, but it's been done to a higher level. Let me give you an example. When you're in space and you're in combat, all you do is you aim at your enemies and you shoot. You have your regular guns and you have your missiles, and that's about it. And you dodge and you shoot. That's about it. It's not like Starfield where you can target weapon systems, shields, propulsion, all individually and neutralize a ship. There is none of that. It's very basic. So when I say the gameplay is basic, that's what I mean. When I talk about on foot and you're in combat and you're shooting, it's very much a very basic cover-based shooter. Even more basic than like the original Gears of War. It's everything from a gameplay perspective is bare minimum and functional. What's there works, and it works and does what it's supposed to do, but it's very basic, as in, as if it was designed 15, 20 years ago. Keeping with basics and things not moving forward, the progression system. Now, on the one hand, what I like about the progression system was the fact that instead of using a traditional XP progression system and you get a skill point, this one is challenge based. You have to complete challenges to unlock new abilities from various teachers who will teach you the abilities that you want. Now, not all the teachers are available to you. You have to go out and find them. But then once you do and you unlock them, you have to complete the challenges to unlock the new abilities. The problem is the abilities themselves don't do anything to change the core gameplay loop. So even regardless of if you get all of the abilities or some of the abilities, your main character won't play any different. It's not like Jedi Survivor where you had 5 different lightsaber styles and they play differently. There is none of that here. Sticking with, again, basic, is the story itself. The story itself is nothing special, to be honest, and it is ruined by horrible pacing. So the gist of the story works as follows. Your character gets into trouble and has to pull off a job. Upon pulling off the job, you get your freedom. That's basically how it works. And you got to recruit a crew in order to do the job. The problem is 2/3 of the main story is you recruiting your crew. So the overarching story doesn't move. When you meet, the order at which you get your crew is up to you. You choose which one you want to recruit first. But once you find your crew, they each have their own stories and their own backstory behind it, and you got to help them out. But the overarching story doesn't move until you get your entire crew together. And then once you do, the pacing goes from incredibly slow to incredibly fast. Think of it like watching a 2-hour movie where the first hour and 15 is very slow. Then next thing you know, at the very end, boom, 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 everything happens and the movie's over. That's basically how the story is of Outlaws. And in turn, for some players, it would be a slog to get to that point where you're just playing the game and they're like, I'm not really into it. And then only until then. So it does take a while to get going, narratively speaking, which could be off-putting for some. Now let's talk about the negatives of Star Wars Outlaws, and there is a few of them. I spoke earlier about how the core gameplay is very, very basic, and how everything about it is basic. Part of the reason why it's basic is because of the weapons. Your character only has one weapon and one weapon alone. That's it. You have your pistol. You can modify your pistol. You have a few firing mode options. And that's it. That's all you have. There are some secondary weapons that you can use throughout your journey. But in the moments that you do use them, not only do you use them for a very small portion of the game, but you can't carry them with you. It's not like we're Uncharted, for example. You picked up an AK and then, let me climb this rope over here and I keep that AK with me. That doesn't happen in this game. Secondary weapons get dropped all the time, which adds to this frustration. So your main character only has one weapon to use. And when you finally get a secondary weapon, it's like, look, I want to use this rifle or I want to use this blaster. But then it's like, I got to leave the area and it requires me to climb a wall, go into a vent, hack something, melee somebody. Every action that you do, for the most part, other than collecting minerals and stuff like that, drops your weapon. Everything drops your secondary weapon. So sometimes you'll enter an area, you'll blast a few people and be like, look, I'm going to pick up this weapon. And then you go to leave the area and you got to climb a wall and then you lose it again. So the biggest issue there with the gameplay being basic is that you only have one weapon that you use for the most part of the game. And everything else just gets left behind. The second issue I have with the gameplay is stealth. Now this is very much a stealth-oriented game, and it's not very good. The stealth tools that you have at your disposal is very, very basic. Your companion Nyx can do things such as distract enemies, steal things from them, and even attack them to help you out. But that's about it. If you take out an enemy while doing a stealth section, you can't drag their body and hide them. Their body's left wherever you knock them out. So then when another buddy comes in, they see the body, they want to investigate. So the stealth parts of this game is very, very basic. Again, the overall gameplay, I have to stress this enough, the overall gameplay is very, very basic. But what makes the stealth sections the worst part of this game is because they took a very old schoolish approach where the mandatory stealth sections in the game where you cannot sound the alarm, if you get caught, instantly wipe back to the checkpoint. And some of these checkpoints, they're quite a ways away sometimes from what you were doing, especially in the latter parts of the game. Don't get me wrong, the entirety of the game is not stealth, but it's very stealth focused. And because of this, it's not done well. You don't have the tools, the checkpoints are far away if you get caught, and it can be quite frustrating. The other thing I want to talk about is useless minigames. So they try to take a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth approach with the minigames, and most of them are a waste. Your lock-picking minigame, which is similar to what was in Starfield, is a arithmetic minigame where there's a rhythm that you have to push the button to. Thankfully, there's an option that you can turn that off, which is what I did, and I just pushed the R2 button. Because quite frankly, for me, I'm bad at rhythm games, and I don't want to sit there and have to do a arithmetic lock-picking minigame every time I have to lock-pick something, which is going to happen a lot. The other minigames that are in here that are kind of useless is there's another one when you're hacking and you have different symbols. And all you really have to do is just guess which ones they go, and they'll tell you. The game will tell you, hey, this one isn't part of the password. This one's in the wrong slot. And you just have to move it over to the right slot to have it go through. So a lot of these mini games are basic. However, there is the one mini game that I thought was pretty decent, and that is Sabacc. If you're a Star Wars fan, you know what Sabacc is. It's the card game that you see that is played in the cantina virtually in every single movie. Sabacc is definitely in this game, and it's actually pretty fleshed out. It's probably the one mini game that's actually properly fleshed out, and it's fun to play. It is no Queen's Blood from Final Fantasy VII, but it's still there, and it's there for those who are interested in playing it. Lastly, the big issues that I have as well was just overall Ubisoft jank. We're talking bugs, glitches, clunky controls or clunky mechanics where if you're trying to grapple the rope, you have to look at it at a certain angle to be able to do it. And the other thing I want to mention was how they broke the game during the early access period. PlayStation players had to restart their save file because of Ubisoft. In my case particularly, they released a patch on PC that broke the game for me, and I had to go in and fix it and do things to get it to work. So bugs, glitches, the traditional Ubisoft jank is present, and that's another negative for this game. In conclusion, how do I feel about Star Wars Outlaws? Do I recommend? Should you play Star Wars Outlaws? And quite frankly, that answer is yes. You should play Star Wars Outlaws if you are a Star Wars fan. But even then, don't buy it at full price. I would say subscribe to Ubisoft Plus for 1 month, play the game, finish it, unsubscribe, or wait for a significant sale of at least like 35-40%. Because the game looks pretty, sounds pretty. It has a high level of immersion that Star Wars fans would absolutely love. But the gameplay is mediocre at best across the board, and the game lacks overall depth, has horrible stealth mechanics, and bugs and glitches that you would expect out of an Ubisoft title. So my final recommendation is play the game on Ubisoft Plus if you can, or buy it at a significant discounted price. Aside from this, I think Star Wars Outlaws is a decent game with a good foundation that with some work could be a good franchise down the road if they were to do a sequel and iron out these issues. Overall, I'm giving Star Wars Outlaws a 7 out of 10. This is Veteran Gamer, and I hope to see you guys next time.